All right. So I'm Scott O'Neill. I have the privilege of moderating this incredible panel filled with friends, longtime friends. We're going to start down there with Colin. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us either a lesson you learned or a deal you love that you're proud of, you want to talk about.
Thank you, Scott. Colin Neville, I oversee our sports practice. A lesson that I've learned is don't be on panels that Scott O'Neill is moderating because he's going to throw curveballs at you.
That's a great lesson for everyone. Sal?
The lesson I've learned, never say no to a man named Vito. That's the first thing. And the deal I guess I'm proudest of is the Chicago Cubs purchase.
Fantastic. Don, you want to introduce yourself and a lesson you learned?
Yeah.
You're good? You're live?
Am I good?
Yep.
All right. Don Cornwell, the co-founder and CEO of Dynasty Equity. Favorite deal was the recap of the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I'm a Steelers fan.
Great. Passion project?
Passion project, but also great family, great asset, NFL, all that. And I got to work with this guy a lot, which was a lot of fun. Lesson learned, same deal, actually. Relationships matter. That was a very complicated deal with a lot of intricacies. It had to do with league rules and the like, and the way in which we as advisors, the lawyers, the Rooney family, and the league worked together to get something done was really unique. And if you just go in with a transactional frame of mind, it doesn't work. The relationship really mattered.
I think this group of the people I know in this business are all extraordinary relationship managers, so that doesn't surprise me. Lyle, introduce yourself.
So Lyle A's, founder and CEO of Verance Capital. I'll tie that into one of the lessons I learned. It's easier to be an investor in sports than an advisor in sports. So the last time I was on a panel with these gentlemen, I think we were advisors. So I'm happy to be in front of you as an investor. Favorite deal is the acquisition of the Houston Dynamo and Dash, where I'm now the vice chairman. So I get to invest around sports, but also as a second day job, operate soccer clubs. So I'm a real life Ted Lasso.
What could possibly go wrong? Okay, thank you for that. Let's talk basketball first. Phoenix Suns on the block, 30% stake, under over $3 billion valuation.
Over.
I say no comment. Is that possible? No, I'll go over.
I'm on the freaking buy side. I'm not going to tell you that.
Over, definitely.
Okay. Tell me a little bit, one of you tell me a little bit about the dynamic of, it's an interesting deal because 30% stake is on the block and you can buy 100% or 30%. And so will buying just 30% increase the pool enough to increase the valuation?
So I would say this shows the value of a good advisor. And if you buy an LP stake in a team, you should make sure you have tag rights. For sure. I don't think it matters, to be honest. I think when you print a value in sports, whether a 30% piece transacted or a 100% piece, as long as control of that team, which 30% delivers, comes with it, now you've set a new floor.
Yeah, I'd say, well, first of all, the most guys are really good who are on it. It's going to be a complicated M&A situation with a lot of tactics involved because James does have an interesting position. And so as I look at it as an outsider looking in, I like the 30% thing, but it's not as simple as somebody just buys 30% and they waltz in and the Jaffe just sits there. I think it's going to be much more complicated. It's going to take much longer. And I think it actually might scare some people away because they look at it and say, wait a minute, this thing is much more complicated than I thought it was.
This is an interesting one because there is one group that's a fund that does have tag rights. So it's not really 30%, it's more than that. But I do think that it's a bigger universe of investors that can write that check if you're writing 35 or 40 cent dollars. So I think if that's all that's going to be sold, I think it'll drive price up, depending on who the advisor is.
One, and we can come back down if we want. If Lorraine Jobs is in fact the buyer of this team, Does the garden variety billionaire get washed out if you've seen some of these last deals go for the big, heavy hitters?
Yeah, I think you witnessed that dynamic with the Broncos. I mean, most people were pretty aware that if the Walton family wanted to own the Broncos, that they would find a way to do it, and they did. So I think that, by the way, despite that, there still were several bids that were north of $4 billion for the Broncos, which is a very good sign for the NFL. Yeah, look, if she doesn't show up, could seriously damage the process. So it's a very tricky dynamic you got to manage.
Let's talk football, American football. If I were running any business and I could simply move a team to a different market and add $1 billion in value, I would move that business. And yet we have football teams in cities like Jacksonville and Cincinnati that can move to Toronto tomorrow with a bit of work with the league, I'm sure, and a little payment. How much value do you think that would add to Cincinnati or Jacksonville's value? Lyle, Colin, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll just rewind back, and Don probably knows this better than anyone here, is with the Buffalo Bills in 2014. We were working with Bon Jovi, of all people, and the Rogers family, and their thesis was to buy it and move it into Toronto, and massive city. I think it's easily $1 billion in value in a big city like that.
But the thing is, you got to remember that the leagues own those markets, so it's a partnership. So you can't just move the team. You've got to pay relocation fees,
It's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's
Come
not
on,
just
you don't pick up an NFL team. I don't care where it is and move it. I mean, the politics involved with trying to do something like that. And what do you think the league would charge you if you're taking the Toronto market away from them for expansion? I mean, what's an expansion franchise worth in Toronto? Give me a number. Got to be a four handle on it, right? So the league's going to want you to pay up for that. So now all of a sudden, the $1 billion that you made by moving is negated by what the league will charge you. So that's a tough one. That's not a simple one.
And they also hire smart guys like Don to tell them what the value of that relocation's worth, and it usually is pretty close to the payment that you make to the rest of the owners in the league.
I'd also just add, the leagues, I'll say leagues, not just the NFL, they don't like to just leave communities, right? I mean, they especially if a community's been supportive. It's one thing if you can't get a new building and there's no fans, but if you've got a fan base that loves that team, it's really hard to pick up and move. It's not a fun thing, and I don't think any owners don't want to do it. Ask Art Modell what happened to his life after he left Cleveland. It was miserable, and I don't think the leagues like to leave cities in a lurch. That's why the next priority for the league was to get a team back into Cleveland, because they knew how passionate that fan base was and how much damage they may have done if they didn't go back.
Yeah, there's no team in the NFL that's in distress, right? Everybody gets the same payment of their national media contract. So they're all making money, whether they have 5 people in the stands or, 50,000 people in the stands. So, yeah, if a team were in distress, I could see them moving it, but that's not happening in the NFL. I mean, my golden retriever could run an NFL team and make money. I mean, and he's dead.
That's not meant to disrespect any of you who are running NFL teams. We love you and appreciate all your hard work. All right, let's talk tennis. Let's move to tennis. Will we see a live tennis? Lyle.
No.
It doesn't have to be Saudi-backed. It's illustratively.
Look, I think tennis needs to produce stars. I don't know that there's as much of a league issue with tennis. So I don't think there's the need nor desire for that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that the top players in tennis do exhibitions all the time, all over the world, and get paid enormous amounts of money. And they have the freedom to do so, right? If you're Roger Federer, you're not playing that many tournaments. If the folks in the Middle East want to have you play some mixed doubles thing in front of 20 people and pay you $2 million, you can go do that, right? Golf, it's a little more complicated, right?
So for Sal and Colin, if you rolled up the Grand Slams, would you create value or destroy it? And if so, how much do you think?
Wait, you're talking to me about tennis? I
Colin.
ride the subway every day. I don't know anything about tennis. Tennis is a bourgeois sport. It's for people with a lot of money, not me.
That's
right?
Ask
one of these other.
Colin.
Colin would know because he's got tons of money, not me. I ride the subway.
So anytime you want to come work for us, Sal, you're welcome to.
Calling me here.
If you roll up the majors, is that the question, Scott? Under one umbrella. I don't know that you're destroying value there. I have a lot of perspective on golf, which having lived it for 3.5 years, the majors are incredible businesses. They're independent. They want to remain independent. I don't see a partnership amongst the 4 majors in tennis anytime soon.
Okay, let's talk leagues. Which league should have a European division? And will they have one in the next decade?
Hockey.
100%, I agree. Any other on the
answer
table?
is yes. 10 years or 20 years?
10 years.
Let's make the over under 12.
We can.
All right. Under.
Any other view?
I mean, look, nobody in Europe cares about American football. Let's be honest. I mean, they play a few games in London, but they don't even know what it is, okay? So we'll get rid of that, and baseball, not so much. So obviously basketball is a worldwide sport, okay? Does it work? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, the best players want to play here because that's where the money is. All right. So soccer. Let's think about hockey, okay? Let's think of the demographics of hockey. Hockey's played in Europe mostly in Scandinavia and in Russia, okay? Now, the last time I heard, like, the Russians aren't, like, they're persona non grata. And there are more people within 75 miles of this building than live in all the Scandinavian countries combined. There are no people there, okay? Check it out. I'm not making it up. It's a demographic fact. So how do you have a freaking league in Scandinavia? They got 9 people. I mean, it's really hard. It's not easy to do. And demographics don't lie. And you know it. You're smiling because you know it. There's nobody there.
I think you'd sell it. You could put an arena in London. You'd sell it out.
Yeah,
It's a very diverse city.
I don't know.
A lot of Russians there.
Well, they
a lot of
sell out.
Czechs.
You need a league, though.
They currently sell out in
you need a
Stockholm
bunch
and
of
Helsinki
teams.
and Bern and Munich and
yeah.
Prague. It's
That's
pretty
a
big.
license to lose
Hockey's
money.
pretty big.
But
The NBA eventually, Scott, should
Okay.
have a European.
yeah, the
division.
NBA maybe. Yeah.
I think there's 150 European players in the NBA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Third of the league now. Okay, let's talk about the NCAA. You're each named president of the NCAA. Tell me one thing you're going to do or change. Unless you think everything is working swimmingly well.
Can I put UCLA and USC back in the Pac-12
Yes, you
as
can.
a Stanford guy who's freaking out over what's going to happen to the Pac-12? That's what I would do.
Okay.
I think they have to find a way to parity again. Competitive balance. Don, Stanford, myself, another Pac-12 school that people forget still in Division I is the University of Colorado that I swear was good one day. They'll never be good again under the current system, and that's a problem. I think they got to figure out how to fix that.
Yeah, and I don't know how you fix that, right? Because it is a real competitive balance problem, right? The SEC is like, they dominate, and everybody else is along for the ride. And unless they balance that, they're going to lose audience.
Some sort of regulatory framework for NIL, Scott, and almost like a salary cap for each school could help, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Okay, excellent. Give me a trend you're following closely.
Growth in Major League Soccer. You guys should invest.
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at the valuations and where they're going, and they're going one way. They're going up. I've never seen demand like this. We've done 3 LP sales this year at levels I never thought, you would get for an LP sale. We're getting tremendous interest in the GP stuff, in the control sales we're doing. I mean, look, it's the only thing I remember from economics, because I fell asleep in a lot of my economics classes, is if you have a fixed supply of something and the demand continues to grow because capitalism is a wonderful thing and it creates more and more billionaires, you push the price up, right? And that's what's happening. I mean, there are a lot more buyers than there are assets to buy. And that, I don't think that trend's going to change in the near term for a long time.
And so markets in trouble, debt's getting very expensive and tightening. A little concern for you. Any impact that you're seeing in terms
What happened during the Great Recession? All right? Let me tell you what happened during the Great Recession. I get hired 6 weeks before Bear Stearns was ready to fall over and die. I know it didn't. Somebody's going to tell me it didn't go bankrupt. It did. Okay, Lehman Brothers goes bankrupt. The freaking Tribune companies, which own the Cubs, went bankrupt. We had to buy the Cubs out of a 363 sale, right? Out of bankruptcy, and we still wound up paying the highest price ever for a Major League Baseball team up to that date. There were 7 control sales during the Great Recession. 7. 6 of them were record prices. The only one that wasn't was the Steelers because it was not an arm's length transaction. I mean, give me a break. What other asset class can you say that about? You're killing me here.
It's a record LP an LP sale, though. So I would say the one thing that's different this time around are interest rates. So I always used to say if a billionaire is earning 0%, it's pretty easy to bid up these sports teams. The opportunity cost has gotten greater. And whether that matters, we'll see. I'm totally with Sal. There's this scarcity that is not going anywhere, and more people have more money. But suddenly you're going to be buying into a sports team where you can make 6-8% just by leaving your money in the bank.
8%? What bank do you?
I'm a visionary.
Jeez,
I'm predicting the
8%,
future.
just put my money in the bank. Look, the thing I'm watching is Amazon, Microsoft, big tech, coming into sports in a big way. I think we've all been waiting for this for a while, and the early returns are quite good. We're seeing the numbers, both on demographic side, show positive signs. I think I read something where on the first Thursday of Thursday Night Football, Amazon sold more Prime memberships than they do on Cyber Monday. That's huge, right? And I think that's something that gets a little bit underestimated. And these leagues start to chop up and slice and dice their rights. Having the big guys come in changes everything.
Colin, anything you're tracking?
I'd say one of the phenomenons in the pandemic that we witnessed was the rise of all the Web3, NFT sort of dynamics in sports. I think a lot of it is shaking out right now. So seeing what was real, what was pixie dust will be interesting. There were a lot of companies that were funded in the last 18 months at outrageous valuations that will have to live up to those valuations with a tightening market, as Lyle alluded to. So seeing where that shakes out, I'm pretty skeptical in general. But a lot of teams took the free money over the last year or so.
When you say skeptical, you're skeptical of Web3 in general or NFTs?
The application
Web3?
in sports and how sustainable it is and utility for users. It has to be more than just selling a token or buying an NFT. You have to be able to use it somehow, I think, really to make it last.
Yes. Anybody have any Web3 views on how you see some application in sports?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I watch in that space is ticketing, right? And as somebody that's been just personally a season ticket holder to the Knicks, but have had the benefit of working with some of the ticketing companies and moving my tickets, companies like Logitix, I can see the data as to where my tickets travel and what they trade for. And I just wonder, in a world where that is a blockchain contract between me and the team, if there's more that can be done. And I think the teams are now just starting to get the data that they need. I think blockchain will change that. It'll be to the next degree. And as IP holders, they continue to make value, which is, I think, that to me is the biggest thing, is the teams have never really gotten true value for their intellectual property. I think blockchain will help make that happen. It's going to take some time. There's going to be some hiccups, right? Colin, to your point, I don't know that NFTs and collectibles is the right way of doing it, but I do think that technology does help over time.
Any other view? Okay. If you could tell yourself something 10 years ago, today, to save yourself a lot of pain, anguish, and maybe a missed deal here or there, what would you tell yourself? piece of advice?
Be a healthcare banker, probably.
Here, here.
Yeah. What would I tell myself?
Yes.
Every time I told somebody that they were overpaying for something, I was wrong. Every freaking time. And every time I high-fived my guys and we thought we got the highest possible price for something and whoever bought it overpaid, I was wrong. I mean, those people are laughing at us 5 or 10 years later.
Well, it's funny. I think it was the same four of us on a panel, and it was right after Steve Ballmer bought the Clippers.
Yeah.
And the question was, is he out of his mind for paying $2 billion? Well, ask yourself almost 10 years later, was he out of his mind? And I think the answer is very different now than the prevailing wisdom then. And, to Sal's point, these things keep going up.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to put money personally in the Grizzlies years ago, and I didn't. That was a big mistake. Big mistake. Like massive.
No
Colin was in high
regrets,
school,
Scott.
unfortunately, so it's a little
No
different.
no regrets from 10 years ago. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's what I tell myself.
That thing at the college bar that you 10 years ago.
Not going to react to that, Don.
Any international sports that you are doing business in, tracking, or following that would surprise us?
That would surprise you? Probably not.
Maybe not you, wouldn't surprise you, but it would surprise us. Any work in cricket?
Yeah, doing some. I don't think that would surprise
Well,
me.
that's not a surprise.
I'm saying that's not
exactly.
surprising any of you.
Cricket.
That's not a surprise.
It's a smart room. People know
Okay.
cricket.
I don't know. I'm looking out there. I don't see it. So tell me about cricket. Tell me about rugby.
I'm not doing rugby stuff, but
Rugby? No. But cricket is a huge market. I mean, the Indian market is over 1 billion people and continues to grow, and it's a sport that's played internationally. I mean, it's not on the radar screen of most Americans, but it's a huge sport.
There's an entity out there in the U.S. that's trying to build Major League Cricket here. Several successful, well-known Indian Americans, tech sort of people are leading the charge. I'm actually long-term bullish on the opportunity.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., yeah, in the right markets.
Well, it's funny on that one, and I can't take credit. Someone, I think, in this audience made the point to me earlier today, but that cricket league is essentially an international media rights play where they're going to sell the rights back to India, which is kind of fascinating. It's almost like a nice window dressing here where it needs to look good enough, but the value in that league is selling the rights back into India where they care.
Okay, help us understand the impact that PIF, the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, will have on the world of sports in the next 20 years.
I'm not touching that.
pass.
You got to be kidding me.
Lyle?
Look, I think whether you think there's such a thing as sports watching or not, the Saudis have a keen interest in investing dollars in sports, and they have very deep pockets. And I don't think there's many leagues or teams or owners that are going to be that selective in the capital that they take. So I do think PIF will have an increasingly visible role in American and international sports.
I mean, I'll take it more broadly. The idea that there's global institutions, entities pouring money into sports is great for everybody in this room. It's great. And it's not just PIF, it's the pension plans, it's wealthy individuals.
Yeah, it's just going to drive up prices, right? That's another tailwind in the industry, and that's, for us, it's good.
I mean, it's been a wildly inefficient world in sports for a long time. Just getting more capital in is great for all of us.
Yeah.
And just for the room, which I'm sure you're reading, they've acquired Newcastle United, and they're going to make that a top 7 club very quickly.
It's already 5th, I think, in the table right now.
See what they're doing. I'm seeing over time. I think this is like 6, just became 7. They have McLaren of F1, which is an elite F1 team, and they started a golf tournament. So that's a heck of a start.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're huge sponsors of Formula One. They don't have a race.
race to the kingdom, of course. But
They're very
Think-
sophisticated, by the way. Like the
Yes.
infrastructure at the PIF is very sophisticated.
Yes. Worth digging in. We had such rich comments from the no comments here. It was really helpful. Okay.
Thank you.
Since we learn best from times of struggle, can you tell us about maybe a deal you lost that you should have had, or a decision you'd like to take back, or something you learned along the way that was painful and helps you make you a better executive today?
Damn, thinking.
These guys done everything right. It's different from the rest of us. It's hard.
Now, look, I mean, recently we were one of the finalists in the sale of an NBA team, which we didn't win. I'm not going to name the team, but you could figure it out. And I still can't figure out why we didn't win and why the bank that won. But that's life, right? You learn more from your mistakes. Sometimes you learn from your mistakes. Sometimes you don't understand what you did wrong, but you just lose. I mean, that's what happens, right? That's the greatness of capitalism. It's the greatness of competition.
I'll go next. Not really a deal-related thing, but I think looking back over the pandemic, I did not do, as a leader in my firm, a good enough job of mentoring people. I was so focused on, we were all really busy with transactions, and I was jumping from Zoom to Zoom and doing transaction after transaction. Quietly, I was building my new firm, and I was not being the mentor that I need to be, and that's bad leadership.
I think I've learned the hard way, both as an advisor on the buy side, but then also as an investor. In sports especially, and I'm talking primarily in the team space, you can't be $50 or $100 million smart. So you ask someone who would have paid 1.9 for the Clippers, or someone who would have paid 500 for the Bucks, right? Are they happy that they were disciplined there, or if they had stretched a little, would they be happier today? And I think the answer personally, and I think for a lot of people, is, they got too cute there, and these deals are scarce, and there's no real way, and Don and I have joked about this recently, to intrinsically value these assets. So you got to kind of suspend some of that when you're involved in this space, and I think I finally get that, but it took a while.
And that's becoming increasingly difficult as a lot of the acquirers are hedge fund, PE, venture. So have you all found some difficulty in that conversation? Do you have that conversation? And what does it sound like or feel like?
Well, that was my interest rate point. I talked to a guy who said, I can bid this to a 5% yield because, I'm earning 0%. Right, so that's a 20 times multiple. Can you bid it to a 20 times multiple when you're not competing with zero? So I think that's what the hedge fund and private equity guys have to kind of get their heads around. Now, I don't think it changes the value of these teams in the short term, certainly, right? And someone who thought that way missed the Broncos by $1 billion.
Yeah, look, every loser in a bidding situation thinks that the winner overpaid. Every single one. And over the last 30 years I've been doing this, they've been wrong every single time. So you tell me what's different. I don't know. If you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at interest rates, you know what you are? You're the losing bidder. That's not what the winning bidder is looking at. And they have vision, they see it, and you know what? They've been right. And if I'm working with somebody on the buy side, that's the guy I want to represent. I don't want to represent the guy who's going through the books for every single number and finding reasons not to do the deal. I want to find reasons to do the deal.
Now, it's going to get harder, there is more and more wealth being created, but that pyramid's getting awfully thin up top, right?
That's why we need people to have funds and take large limited partnership stakes in these things, and all this new capital moving in is going to help. And then there's international capital moving in, not just North American capital, which we've never really seen before in large amounts, but it's flowing into the market, and that's a driver. And remember, there are a limited number of teams. It's not like you can create another one. It's not like, that building's too expensive, I'll buy this one. You get one poke at that pig, and if you miss it, it's gone.
Scott, we didn't feel that in the Chelsea process at all when we were selling that asset. We had 250 people call us in the first week after the announcement that it was for sale. And I think what would surprise people, and I'm not going to obviously divulge it on this panel, but the people that called, including strategics, including corporates, including countries that were interested in buying Chelsea that didn't ultimately move on the deal because of the Russia situation, would shock people. And I think the next big asset that comes up, you'll see all of those people come and buy sports teams, and they're not the people that we are used to talking about that would want to own sports teams.
Well, that's what's so exciting is really smart investors, smart corporates are all looking at this asset class and saying, I got to get in, right? As the world has gotten more complicated and people are competing with Netflix and video games and all these things, the one thing that continues to perform is sports, and people notice that. And that for us is the main driver of what we're doing.
And you know, technology is shortening the product life cycle of most companies, right? But not this industry. I mean, we don't care how the media rights are distributed, right? As long as you own them, you're going to make money. This business is almost technology-proof in that the product life cycle is not shrinking. Look, I'm willing to bet you that in 100 years, the Yankees will be here and Apple won't. It's a much better bet.
Yeah, and it's funny because the product does change, right? If you think back to the Knicks and the way they played basketball in the days of like Charles Oakley, it's very different than what you see today. It's a different product, right? I mean, but it's still called basketball, and that's the beautiful. It evolves.
It evolves, right?
With the way people want it to be, and the
Right.
leagues are smart, changing the rules and making sure that they've got a product that fits what people want today.
Yeah.
I want to push on one of Colin's comments. Just that's top tier. Chelsea is, you'd argue, a top 5 asset in all sports, right? Somewhere around
Sure.
there, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I agree with you. I think that the top, pick a number, 20 assets will always have incredible attraction. Tell me about B assets. Let's not name any, but tell me about B assets when the economy is struggling. Do you feel it more there, or Sal? Are you still more bullish? You're like, no, let's get in, let's buy, let's move on.
Look, we've done, I mean, the economy's in the shitter, right? Let's be honest. We've done 3 very significant limited partnership sales already this year. At valuations, if I told you what the valuation was, you wouldn't believe me, okay? Crazy, all right? Demand beyond supply. That's what I'm seeing. And all right, maybe you're going to, I mean, we just came out of the worst thing that could happen with sports, right? Which is people can't go to the games, right? We had a pandemic followed by all this economic stress, followed by, you name it, war in Europe, people threatening nuclear attacks against each other, and the asset values are still going up. Come up with a scenario that's worse than that. If you're going to tell me an asteroid's going to hit the Earth and we're all dead, yeah, okay, values are going to go down. Short of that, I don't see it.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I
pretty
think
sure. I don't know.
people spend their
It might
money.
not go down.
If asteroids
No,
come, I'm buying
basically
everything.
happened the last couple of years. Look, I think the leagues are smart too, Scott. So that top tier asset isn't what they're worried about. But not every team in every league is a top tier asset. So that's why these funds have now been approved. And I think eventually they're going to figure out a marketplace for more liquidity. So Don doesn't have to wait 10 years to get out of an investment. And when that happens, and these are more freely tradable, now the values continue to go up. Right now the scarcity goes down a little, but the liquidity goes way up, and smart people are going to figure out that's how to keep these values.
It's why companies go public traditionally, right? The lowest cost of capital is through an IPO. I think that's what Lyle's alluding to eventually. Retail investors, people in this room who are not already team owners, will be able to access ownership.
And so I imagine 2 years ago, if we did this panel, we've been talking about consolidation, right? About teams coming together. We haven't seen as much consolidation over the last 2 years as I would have anticipated. Is that something you'll see in the future? If so, why? And organizations, sports and entertainment organizations going public, will we see more action?
Certainly in football, meaning soccer, you'll see more consolidation as the multi-club model becomes more and more prevalent. City football sort of started it, and you're seeing multiple people try to replicate what they've done because of the synergy, because of the scale, because of the additional reach amongst players. In the other sports, I don't see it in the U.S. anytime soon, but curious what everyone else thinks.
I think the values are getting so big that it's complicated. You have to have a very unique ownership group to do it.
I think you're right. I mean, I think at some point the valuations are going to be so high that you're going to have to take them public. I mean, it's one thing to say, I don't know, pick a team. The Dallas Cowboys are worth $10 billion. Well, okay, under the ownership rules right now for the NFL, who's going to be able to buy them? Like 3 people? I mean, you're not going to get a bidding situation. So eventually, once valuations get high enough, the leagues are going to have to change their ownership rules. They just are.
I mean, Scott, put you on the spot, like the Devils. I don't think there was any equity, was there?
What's that?
With the Devils?
It was very small.
This is a very small amount of
Very
equity.
small.
You can't do that anymore.
It was negligible, right?
Yeah, that doesn't exist anymore.
Right. I don't know.
Oh, really? We should
We'll
talk.
see.
All right.
Lyle, any perspective on that? You want to weigh in?
I think I'm with Colin. I mean, in soccer, for sure. I think more so than consolidation, you're just going to see people trying to make these into even more of these multi-asset businesses. So whether that's real estate, whether that's entertainment,
Yeah.
you need more avenues to generate revenue.
Business as a platform.
Correct.
And is that something you're talking to prospective buyers about? And how does that?
Constantly. I mean, you use the team as the centerpiece of a much bigger strategy, and there's multiple owners that are doing it.
And you can see examples now. So it's not just, it used to be we always talk about, well, look at LA Live. Well, we're not AEG, so that's hard to replicate. But if you look at Tampa, what they've done there, you look at Milwaukee, what they've done there, and that's maybe why it's less interesting to go buy another team, but instead spend your time and resources doing some development around the arena or the stadium.
Yeah, the team becomes the cornerstone, right? But there are a lot of other investments you can make. I mean, look at what the Cubs have done with Wrigleyville. I mean, it's not just the team now, it's the real estate, it's the media assets, it's not just a baseball team.
Music venue at Wrigley.
Yeah.
If anybody has a question, just raise your hand or come up to this microphone. We'd love to take it. This light is blaring in my face. I won't be able to see you over here, but I'm sure you're all beautiful, beautiful people. So let me know if you have a question. Tell me about hiring. I'm sure some people watching and maybe some people here would love to be you someday or work for you or with you today. What are you looking for? What types of folks do you hire? What kind of backgrounds do you look for? What kind of people? What kind of skill sets?
On the sports team front, we're actually looking for someone who has more than just sports experience. I think when you grew up in the business, you wanted someone who could sell tickets and sponsorships, and that was the ideal sports executive. I think at least the way we're looking at it is these are bigger, more complicated businesses now, and somebody who has more experience than that could be very interesting to a sports organization, and I think that's relatively new, right? You're starting to see chief strategy officer positions in sports teams. I didn't see that 10 years ago. So on the sports side, I think we're expanding the scope of who makes sense. On the kind of banking investment side, I'll defer to these guys because I'm sure we think about it similarly.
Me? I don't hire anybody. I mean, my 2 MDs have been with me over 20 years. Dan O'Brien's here someplace. He's been with me 19 years. Oh, my assistant, Pat, raise your hand, has been with me how long? 38
She said too
years.
long.
I mean, you check in, you don't check out. So I don't even know what it means to hire anybody.
I think a few of your former people actually work for us now, but anyway.
Well, I mean, some people do leave, but, they...
So they check out.
Well...
Why are you gonna sound?
We
Don't
can
bite. Don't
we
bite.
can, no,
Just eat
we
it.
can
I'm just
no,
teasing.
we're not going to fight.
No,
I can
bite.
give you more details about those people after the.
Fair enough.
You may want to reevaluate.
Does anybody have any
parts
questions?
of your team.
Any questions? All right, Colin, on hiring.
We are hiring, so always. We're growing pretty rapidly. What we focus on, number one, is drive, sort of hunger. Work ethic is pretty important in any of our jobs, but especially in finance, you have to you have to really want to do the job, and then a passion for our industries. And it's not, for us, it's not just sports; it's entertainment, music, gaming. If you're passionate about what you're doing, you don't tend to notice working sometimes 15, 20-hour days back to back. So those are usually it. And then of course diversity. We've got offices all around the world, so we're focused on finding people that can bring a global perspective.
Fantastic. Don, did you answer this one?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, we talked about relationships early, so people who are good at building relationships, that's very important. Number two, sports is getting more complicated. You need people who have a brain that can think about, on one hand, real estate, on the other hand, blockchain technology, right? If you sort of think about what makes up a sports team, it's everything, right? It's media, it's merchandise, it's everything. And that makes it actually a lot of fun. And the third thing, to Colin's point, is diversity. I am spending a lot of time making sure that my firm looks a little different.
Amazing.
Wait, you have to hire smart people? That means I'm going to have to leave the business.
Hey, last question as we wrap up. A sports executive you most admire?
Michael Rubin.
Sal?
Me?
Did you say yourself?
No, me? Are you kidding or what? Well, I mean, the guy I admired the most isn't here anymore, and that's the great George Steinbrenner. George was a visionary. I mean, when he bought the Yankees, $8.8 million, CBS, he put in $2 million, CBS gave him a $6.8 million note, and he took that asset because of belief in the brand that everybody told him was in the wrong neighborhood, the building was a dump, blah, 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 and turned it into one of the greatest brands in sports. I mean, he was an amazing man.
I'll be quick. David Stern, for me. I had the honor of spending 5 years with him. He was a senior advisor to PJT the last 5 years of his life, and I got to spend about 3 hours a week with the man, and I learned so much. I mean, I wish I had 20 years of that, and I know a lot of people in this room did, or a few people did, and God bless you, because that man was amazing.
Real quick, Art Rooney, who Don and I had the pleasure of getting to know, and he thought he was messing with you. He was such a nice guy, but also a great executive and has done great things for football and sports.
Wonderful. I just want to thank Sportico and Scott Soshnick in particular, and these incredible panelists. Please give them a hand. Thank you.